Is Australia going broke? Now, I don't mean that in some dramatic clickbait way. I mean, we are now sitting on almost $1 trillion in government debt. We are heading towards debt levels that we last saw in World War II, and we are looking at nearly 20 years of straight budget deficits. This means we've been spending more than what we've been earning as a government for 20 years, and we have no real end in sight. That is a country that has been spending more than it earns for almost 2 decades. And here is what makes this worse. Every time this government is questioned about the strategy, about the long-term plan, and how they intend to fix this mess, they do not have a clear answer. They do not have proper figures in front of them. Instead, they get defensive. They push it to the next budget, and this is what we have come to. Hey guys, Scott here. Now today is one of those videos where I'm going to expose what is really going on, because when you actually look at the track record of the current leadership, it is ugly. $1 trillion debt. Warnings that Australia's net worth has been wiped out and is effectively worth $0. And how do they plan to plug the hole? Higher taxes. It has already been made clear that income tax will carry more of the load. So if you work a 9-to-5 job and you do not run a business or make investments to minimize your tax, you are the one who is going to be targeted by the new budget. This video is absolutely for you. There are new reports coming out everywhere now. Research institutes, economists, parliamentary hearings, Senate inquiries. This has become a national tension point. And every time someone pulls at the numbers, the picture looks worse and worse. So I'm going to walk you through all of it in plain English, no jargon, just the numbers. I'll take you through what was said in Parliament when they were asked to defend it and what it actually means for your money, your taxes, and your financial future, because you have every right to know what is being done with your money. Let's break it down properly. If you think the budget deficit is some one-off thing that happened because something unexpected came along, I'm telling you right now, you have been lied to. A lot of people try and blame it on COVID, and that's the one and only reason we're sitting where we are. That's not true. This has been building for years, and it has now become the default setting. When you combine the federal budget and the state budgets, Australia has basically been in the red since 2008. And the latest numbers show we are on track to hit about 20 straight years of budget deficits by 2028. 20 years, guys. At what point do we stop calling that cyclical and start calling it a chronic problem? Now, let me tell you why this is happening. Because part of this is that politicians love to mumble through and hope you don't notice. Government spending has climbed and it has stayed high. Across state and federal governments combined, spending has risen to 38.2% of GDP in 2024. Back in the early 2000s, it was 34.7% of GDP. That is a jump of 3.5% of the entire economy going into government spending. And once spending goes up like this, it almost never comes back down. It's very hard to actually readjust the economy and bring that number down. And it is not just total spending either. The ongoing everyday spending, the stuff that repeats every year, has ballooned. These are fixed costs which are set in stone. Federal recurring spending used to average about 7.5% of GDP from 1972 to 2016. It is now 11% of GDP, locked in spending. Here's the basic household version of what is happening. If you spend more than you earn, the gap has to be filled. You either cut spending, you earn more, or you borrow money. Now, when you borrow, you pay interest. When you pay interest, you need more money next year to keep up that interest bill. When you need more money next year, you borrow again. And before you know it, you are stuck on a treadmill where the debt keeps growing. And the interest bill keeps growing too. And you never actually do get ahead, and the debt just grows and grows and grows. That is what Australia is doing right now, just at a country level. And this is why people should be angry, because the deficit is not falling out of the sky. The deficit is a result of poor policy decisions and flawed governance. And when that gap between expense and revenue stays open for 20 years, the only thing that fills it is debt, which brings us to the next problem. We are now sitting on almost $1 trillion in gross federal debt. I have done a detailed video breaking that down, so if you want the full mechanics, go watch that. But here's what matters right now, so stick with me here. Net debt is projected to rise toward roughly 38% of GDP by 2028-29. Combined debts across the country are headed toward levels we have not seen since World War II. That is where our lucky country is headed. We used to be known as a low debt country. We used to rank near the top of advanced countries in our financial strength. Now we have slipped into the middle of the pack. Our ranking has deteriorated. And that matters because the higher the debt base, the higher the interest bill. The higher the interest bill, the less room there is for everything else. Debt is now baked in. It is not something that disappears next budget. It is part of the structure, and so are the recurring interest repayments. So you might ask, Scott, how did we get here? What the hell went wrong? Let me explain that now. If you ask the government why spending has blown out, you will hear three main reasons that they're going to give you. First, they're going to blame it on the aging population. More older Australians means more healthcare spending, more aged care, and more support programs. That pressure builds up. Second, spending growth. Government support programs do expand over time. Services get bigger. Once something is introduced, it really shrinks. That builds year after year. Third, what they call universalism. Instead of tightly targeted support for certain groups, benefits are spread more broadly. Childcare subsidies, NDIS, aged care, more people qualify, so the cost base is enormous. All three of these factors are real, and there is data to prove it. I'm not denying that or questioning it, but here's what rarely gets discussed clearly in the news articles. There is another layer of spending that has nothing to do with aging or demographics and has everything to do with decisions and, bluntly put, corruption. While you are being told that deficits are structural and spending pressures are inevitable, there was a Senate inquiry where politicians were questioned about reckless use of taxpayer money, and what came out of the hearing was embarrassing. We are talking about $400,000 spent on executive retreats for public servants.
Dr. Brower, in response to questions I asked on notice, it's been revealed that the APSC has spent more than $400,000 on executive retreats and training in an environment where government spending is very high, inflation is rising and interest rates are increasing. Do you think that is a publicly defensible use of taxpayers' money?
Yes, Senator.
$400,000, guys. For many Aussies, that is 3 years of take-home pay. That is your mortgage repayments. That is your kids' school fees. That is your life savings. And this was spent on basically a work holiday. And when they were asked about it, the answers were very polished, very technical, and also very defensive. It was framed as investment in leadership. Meanwhile, households are being told to absorb higher interest rates, higher groceries, higher insurance. And tell me the last private company that spent $400,000 on a work holiday. Then you look at infrastructure projects tied to construction sites where there have been serious allegations of corruption, inflated contracts, mates being hired at double the rate, and taxpayers footing the bill. There were reports of workers being paid extraordinary sums for roles that did not justify that amount. Projects have been blowing out by hundreds of millions of dollars, money flowing like it does not belong to anyone. All of this money flowing through all of the economy has done what over time? Inflate assets and drive inflation. This is the layout nobody wants to talk about. Yes, aging does cost money. Yes, social programs cost money. But when you add reckless spending, inflated contracts, luxury travel, and the weak accountability on top of that, the deficits get worse than it ever needed to be. And when you are the one paying the bill, the difference does absolutely matter. So guess who's paying for all of this? The single biggest source of revenue this country has is personal income tax. That is the backbone of the entire system. And we still operate under a tax structure that was designed a century ago. This system has not evolved neatly to capture every modern income stream equally, but it is extremely efficient at taxing PAYG workers. If you earn a salary, your tax is taken before you even see your money. Personal income tax has already risen as a share of GDP, and projections show it climbing further over the next decade, largely through bracket creep. That means your wage can rise on paper, but a bigger slice quietly goes to the government. So when deficits stretch for 20 years and debt climbs toward record levels, the most stable and easiest lever to pull is income tax. If you work a 9-to-5 job, that lever points directly at you. You will be asked to plug the hole in the government's budget and make up for the reckless spending. Now, this next point is where it actually becomes infuriating, because when I was researching this video and going through Senate inquiries and parliamentary hearings, I watched what happened when these budget blowouts, these long-term deficits, and this trillion-dollar debt were put directly to the people running the country. And the response was defensive. When asked whether the budget was really in trouble, where the debt was ballooning, where the deficits were going to correct themselves, the government's line was basically, we're doing fine.
We are actually in a really good position. And this goes, I think, to those opposites.
So senators pushed further. They said, if everything is fine, show us the numbers, show us the savings, show us the strategy. And this is where it gets embarrassing. The government claimed it had delivered over 114 billion in savings across its budgets. It sounds impressive, right? But when pressed on whether that was gross or net savings, the finance minister could not clearly explain it on the spot.
So you reduced expenditure by 114 billion? That's gross, right. What is the net figure?
I don't have that available.
Is it positive or negative?
Well, I just don't have that figure in front of me.
Right, so if you saved $114 billion and you tout that as an achievement, obviously you should know whether it has had a net positive contribution to the budget or not. Has the savings you've made been greater than or less than the new spending that you've initiated?
It is $114 billion in savings and reprioritisations.
But if you spend every dollar that you saved, it's not a save, is it? It's spending it on something else.
Well, that can be the way you twist it.
Now, gross net, that may be a hard concept for many people to figure out what that actually means. But if you're in accounting, you're responsible for numbers. This is basic ABC stuff. By the way, the figure was gross. And when questioned further about the net position, she said, I don't have the numbers to report right now. That's like saying, I forget my middle name. And here is the real issue. Much of those so-called savings were used to fund new spending. So yes, money was saved in one area, but it was spent somewhere else. Guys, this is totally ridiculous, okay? I mean, if you put $100 aside in the morning and then spend that same $100 in a different area in the afternoon, is that really a saving? Of course, that's not a saving. So this is total BS, guys. This is the level of clarity we are getting on a $1 trillion balance sheet, and it did not stop there. At one point, the finance minister publicly claimed that the Howard government was the highest spending government in history. That statement is not true.
My comments yesterday, I do need to correct the record. My comments should have said the Morrison government, not the Howard government.
Guys, unfortunately, this is our government and these are our leaders. This is the government that is asking you to trust them while debt approaches $1 trillion. And guys, by the way, no political party is safe here. Everyone over the last 20 years has put us where we are today. All political parties are at fault. So when you hear about budget deficits, when you hear about higher income taxes potentially coming your way in the next budget, just remember this moment. When they were asked directly, this was their response: deflection, manipulation, and gaslighting. They literally gave us no clear long-term plan to fix the problems that we're in. And that is why people are angry, because if you ran your household finances like that, you would not get away with it. But somehow at a national level, we are expected to accept it. So here is the practical part I want you to focus on. Do not assume the government will magically fix this in the next budget cycle. Structural deficits take structural discipline to unwind, and that has not been the trend. Now, when I was younger, I was buried in debt and working hard without getting ahead. I realized eventually that depending on a single income and hoping policy would be favorable was not a strategy. You need to take your own action. You need to build multiple income streams where possible. You need to understand tax. You need to own assets that grow faster than inflation. You need to educate yourself so you are not blindsided by policy changes. Pay attention to what is happening with spending, with tax thresholds, with incentives. Use your vote carefully. Demand better answers. Because the country might be carrying the debt, but the burden eventually lands on individuals. And this might not affect you for 10 or even 20 years, but the next generation of Aussies will have this debt on their shoulders. Okay, so we have almost $1 trillion in debt, nearly 20 years of deficits. Spending is locked in at higher levels than we have historically managed. Income tax is carrying more and more of the load. This is your paycheck, your tax bill, your future. Now, if this breakdown has helped you see the bigger picture more clearly, please hit subscribe and hit the bell. I will keep breaking this down in plain English every single day so that you can make smarter decisions in a system that is clearly under pressure. Many people say it is broken. And tell me in the comments, I do generally like to read what you have to say and your opinions. Do you feel like the country is being managed responsibly right now, or does it feel like you are carrying more and more of the weight? This has been your daily property update. I do these videos every single day. I compile all of the research for you to keep you up to date so that you can be a property insider. I'll see you guys at the next video.